We're live. Here we are now with, I've lost count, is it the sixth presentation of AVConf 2018? And in a change to our scheduled viewing, we've got me, Sam Joseph, going to talk to you about the Paironauts project. And yeah, that's a project that's been sort of put together in the last 6 months or so. 6 months or so. We did, in fact, get the Paironauts.org domain name quite a long, 6 years ago. Got a lovely new logo from Brent. I'm giving this talk on short notice as a kind of fill-in, so I don't have any slides on it. My apologies. But really, the idea with Paironauts is the idea about being able to find other people online who you can do remote pair programming with, and the inspiration comes from the online games. I particularly noticed my son playing like Overwatch and Fortnite and others Splatoon, where you have people around the world who want to sort of join in an interactive game, and people can come into these waiting rooms waiting for the requisite number of players in order to play the game. I think, for example, in Splatoon you need 8, and so it all depends on the different kinds of games. League of Legends has a similar setup. But so the idea behind Paironauts is that you would come in. The interface is very rough at the moment. Really, we haven't, apart from the wonderful logo by Brent, we haven't really spent any time on making the user experience. But the idea is that you would indicate that you want to, for example, join a pairing session, and you go into a kind of waiting room like this, where it's waiting for a pair partner. I can perhaps show, using a different browser, how what would happen for a second user. So you're there at the moment. There's no other users in the site. Another user who's also interested in doing remote pair programming would come along, and there they are, they're landing on the site there. Different user, and they're thinking they'd like to pair as well. So they click pair, and then so what happens is automatically both parties are redirected to a pairing room. And here we're using the Jitsi system to redirect both of the pairs into an embedded Jitsi, but you can see it's got a sort of a unique ID, so they're not going to be disturbed by anyone else. And I think people probably know how Jitsi works. You can see there, that's me. Oh no, where have I gone? I can't get it on the screen. I pointed down at me. Hello, here I am. Yes. And so you've got screen sharing in there. And so the idea is to try to make a much lighter weight experience than someone having to set up a Hangout, which can be complicated to do. There isn't, as far as we're aware, sort of an existing sort of simplified solution for this, for just finding pair partners. Agile Ventures, we run daily scrums, which also go under the name of daily scrum and pair hookups, where you can potentially find pair partners to work on different open source charity projects within Agile Ventures. But I think what we noticed over time is that not everybody wants to be diving into a big charity project. Sometimes you just want to pair. You've got half an hour, and you just want to pair on a kata. On a simple exercise that will be done and complete within, let's say, 2 hours, depending on the size of the kata. And I mean, in principle, although I think pair programming is never likely to be as popular as Fortnite or these other kinds of games, in principle, with enough people around the world wanting to do pair programming, you could create a nice sort of community environment into which people could, basically drop in and just start pair programming on katas. I think it would be particularly interesting if we could do this, whereby you could indicate what kind of programming language or what kind of level you wanted to pair on, potentially browsing existing sessions. We've also added the idea that there's a sort of a mob option, So, and people could declare their pairing sessions open for others to join, or if they want them closed, if they want them streamed, or what have you. I keep on envisaging sort of a video wall where we have all the different streams, and you can just sort of mouse over different streams that are going live and see and sort of eavesdrop on all the different pairing sessions taking place. A bit like, the Twitch TV has all the different streams of, in some cases, it was mainly computer game streams, but also people doing programming. What they tend not to have so much is streams of people doing pairing, or streams where, if you wanted, you could sort of get involved rather than just watching passively. So to which end we sort of set up this Paironauts as an MVP. It happens to be a Phoenix setup, Elixir Phoenix. So which we've had fun putting that together. Sort of as we've been working on it in the Elixir premium mobs, and we're almost getting to the point where we can start using it to run the mobs for themselves. And we have this general issue in Agile Ventures of getting people together into a hangout for a pairing session or a mobbing session, where somebody who knows what they're doing needs to go to my live events, create live event within YouTube, to create a hangout that will also be streamable to YouTube. It's slightly less of a problem if you're not worried about streaming a video recording of the session. You can sort of create a normal hangout, or even do integrated hangouts into Slack. But part of our sort of transparency approach for Agile Ventures is to try and do this all with recordings and streaming and so on. But I think this places a real block on the community that often there are people around who might like to pair, but they don't necessarily know how to get an environment that's got the screen share and so on and so forth. So we did actually run one of our mobs with everyone just saying, hey, everybody come to Paironauts and just click mob. So if you click mob, of course, here there's no even minimum number requirement, and it'll just take you straight into a mob session there. And in fact, the rest of you could also go there if you want to sort of overwhelm my computer and see if that works. I mean, it's also live there as a sort of minimum MVP. But yeah, so this is something that we can do with Jitsi that we can't do with Hangouts, is embed the system like this, which sort of creates this setup where, just at the click of a button, you can be inserted into a little environment there where, and I think if we mouse over this, you can do screen share as well. I think that's the screen share button there. And we'll just allow that. Oh, cannot allow permanent access to your screen. All right, will you even let me allow it? No, doesn't work in Firefox. Well, a new bug there. Yeah, so we did run a full mobbing session, having everyone here. There's someone else connecting to that as well, at least in Chrome. What we've found in Jitsi is a particular challenge that because this Jitsi uses a shared server, that's the meet.jit.c, it has bandwidth limitations. And so we found the Jitsis to be not as performant as Hangouts. Excuse me. So while we really we're also excited about continuing to develop the Elixir Phoenix side of all this. In some ways, the block for it is making sure that we have kind of performant Jitsi. So a lot of the work recently has ended up focusing on sort of the DevOps side of, can we have our own Jitsi? We've deployed our own Jitsi server control of, and we're gradually working through the settings to make that something that will actually work. Getting some great help from premium members on the DevOps side for this. So we've now got this these Jitsis working. So and you can go in here and go to anything here. So this is the parent. So this is now our own Jitsis hosted on our own Agile Ventures server, and we can potentially throw more power at that. And then this ultimately could become a permanent replacement for Hangouts, where it would have the extraordinary advantage that you can just get there by sharing the link like this, and it remains. You can do that sort of with the Hangouts, but it's always some strange, long, convoluted hash. For here, you could just say, "Hey, everybody, come into this link," and it would be the same one each week. We wouldn't require such a complex connection between the Agile Ventures website one and the Slack. You know, we could just have little Slack reminders repeating and pointing to these things. So if we get all of the different elements working for this, I think it could revolutionize how we do things in terms of Agile Ventures. You know, rather than having mobs and sessions and meetings sort of gated by those people who know how to use the YouTube system, that it would sort of democratize the whole process. And then I think also it would enable this sort of Paironauts community, which I sort of see as potentially even bigger than Agile Ventures, where anybody can, you know, pair program on anything and just have a, you know, a one-click button to get to where they want to go. That said, I think, you know, a lot of people would find it shocking if they could just press a button and suddenly their, you know, cameras on, they're streaming, and there's a lot of work to do, I think, with Paironauts to make it so that the user experience is good, so that people understand what they're getting into. But if we can get the Paironauts system stable, there's some challenges on getting the acceptance tests to run in CI, as usual. And if we can get the DevOps infrastructure supporting it, I think it's a really exciting project. So I think I've chatted for about 15 there. A bit of off the cuff. There's yeah. I think that's all I have to say there at the moment. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about the whole Paironauts system?
Yeah, I have a question, Sam. So is the plan to integrate this into the Agile Ventures events page like we've got at the moment, and so that when you kick off either a mob or peering session from there, it would update the channel, etc.?
So that's a good question. So I think I don't know that I don't necessarily imagine the Paironauts site itself being integrated. I think it would be fantastic. Like, if we look at the Agile Ventures setup, we do for all of the events, we have a Start Jitsi Meet button at the moment, which works, and it will take the kind of the name of the event and append it onto this meet.jit.c, and you'll kind of end up going there and so on. But at the moment, yeah, this has no connection back to anything, although in principle you can just copy and paste that. But the performance issues with Jitsi Meet on this server prevent us from really using it successfully. But yeah, it would be, in my mind, I would absolutely love to have it so that here there would be a button that you could start the event, and you'd just be dropped in there, and it would also be shared and integrated with Slack and so on. But I'd see that as sort of separate from Paironauts per se, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Can you record in Jitsi as well? So can you record like we do for the Hangouts?
So yes, you can. You can. Now that's one thing where in the Hangouts, when you've set up a recordable Hangout via this YouTube thing, you get a very, very easy start broadcast button. So in contrast with the creation process and the fact that the link is super ridiculous, in Hangouts, the Hangout process, when you've got the right permissions and you're set up correctly, actually starting to stream a YouTube video is very, very simple. It's a little bit more complicated in Jitsi, but if the Jitsi is set up for it, then you can do it. So in fact here, then if you're in this live dashboard part of YouTube, there's a whole thing here. And if you take this stream name key and you enter that into the Jitsi, you can then stream to, you know, what have you here, and it's even, is it starting there? No, don't start, no, stop, what's it doing? But see, it wants to stream, it wants to live, it wants to live. Sorry, getting carried away. So you certainly can do that. It's a little bit more involved to do it, but it has the huge advantage over Hangouts that you can start and stop the stream. And unlike the Hangout, where if once you've run your stream, once I click stop broadcast in this Hangout that we're in now, that will be it. We'll never be able to broadcast from the same Hangout again. The Jitsi allows potentially multiple people to broadcast from the same Jitsi and to start and stop and pause and do all sorts of other things. So it's very flexible and powerful in that regard. And we've done that from the over here, not from the agileventures.org one, but from the meets.jit.c. That's all work. So that's a to-do item for our Jitsi on Agile Ventures, is to enable it to support YouTube streaming. It didn't actually take very long. It took about an hour to set it up to support screen sharing. Got that working the other day. We just got it set up so that the multi-way video bridge, so it allows 3 or more participants, is working. So we're gradually knocking off, taking a long time, but we're gradually knocking off the different DevOps issues with the Jitsis. And with the last one now for me will be if we get the YouTube streaming enabled on here, which potentially we could do sometime in the next few weeks. Fingers crossed it turns out not to be harder than we expect. This could become the replacement for Hangouts that we used. But
cool. And is that hosted on the Azure?
This is hosted on Azure, and so the particular thing here is that we could then start. If it does start struggling under the load, we can put it on a bigger box.
Yeah.
Give it more bandwidth. There was some question about whether that was the choke point or not for Jitsi, and maybe it was just like the quality of the Jitsi software. It's an entirely open source project, by the way, itself, that was the block there. It turns out that Jitsi, when you have just 2 people in a Jitsi, it uses a peer-to-peer operation, so that there's only communication really between your server and your client, between you and the other person. It's like it sort of, once they've been brokered via the server, they're just talking directly to each other. But once it's more than 2, then there's this thing called the Jitsi video bridge. And so when you have more than 2 people, it's very much the server that ends up being the block. So but yes, I very much like to see like a healthy, thriving pairing community where people could just sort of drop in and start pairing. And then you've got things like the same stuff that you have in all of the gaming environments, where if you drop out of a session before the agreed time, your reputation gets penalized, and you would have kind of like a Stack Overflow of pairing where everybody would be gaining reputation by coming into pairing sessions and being there for the committed period of time, and potentially getting good ratings from other people for saying, yes, that was a nice person, or have a flagging system. If people are going to come in and be rude, then they get flagged. And so that then you'd actually be able to find any time of night or day a quality pairing thing to have fun and learn through, far broader than the remit of Agile Ventures, which is very specifically about charity projects.
I like the idea of the pairing wall as well. So if you're happy to have watchers, and maybe get those to then score you as well.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Any other questions at all on the Paironauts project? Elixir Phoenix code base that it is? If not, then I think we might wrap up there. I guess I'll just go and check if there was any outstanding questions in the. We've got our little AVAGM conference channel, but it seems like not. All right. Well, excellent. Well, thanks so much for hanging out for a little chat about Paironauts. And if you want to get involved, we've got the Paironauts channel in Agile Ventures. We the Elixir Mob is on Wednesdays if anyone wants to kind of join us for that. We haven't got sort of a weekly meeting going at the moment, but yeah, if we get more people involved, we certainly might start doing that. Great stuff. Thanks, everyone.